So now let's talk about the steps that we're going to go through to solve equations. Okay? These steps are not necessarily all going to be used with every equation that you solve, but you always want to ask yourself these questions in order as you're going through the problem. So does your problem have a fraction or a decimal number? If it has a fraction or a decimal number, your first step is going to be to clear all the fractions or decimals from the equation. And we have a later section where we're going to go through the steps for how you actually clear fractions or decimals from an equation. The second question that you want to ask yourself is, are there any brackets or parentheses in your problem? If there are, you want to use the distributive property, just like we used in the previous section. You'll remember the distributive property is where we can distribute a constant on the outside of a set of parentheses over the numbers that are on the inside. So you're going to look at the expression on the left side of your equation. If it has any parentheses in it, you're going to use the distributive property to clear those out. Then you're going to look at the expression that's on the right side of your equation and use the distributive property there to clear those symbols away from the right side. Okay, so multiply over the groupings. Use the distributive property to clear out those symbols. The next thing you're going to ask yourself is, are there any like terms in my expressions? Okay, so remember, our equation is really two expressions, an expression on the left side and an expression on the right side. And in the previous section on expressions, see if I can put my fingers on it fast here, we learned how to combine like terms. So here's an example of where we did that. You can see us using the distributive property, and then we're combining the 16f and the negative 4f to get 12f, and the negative 2 and the positive 7 to get 5. So you're going to look at the expression on the left side of your equation and combine any like terms that you have, and then you're going to look at the expression on the right side of your equation and combine any like terms that are on that side. Okay. So by the time you're done with step 3, you're going to have two expressions, one on each side of your equal sign. They won't have any fractions in them, they won't have any parentheses in them, and all of the like terms will be gathered. So our next thing is to ask yourself, are there still variables on both sides? Do you have an x in your expression on the left? And then also, do you have an x in the expression on the right? If you do, you're going to move all variable terms to one side. And we'll be doing lots and lots of examples of that so that you can see how you actually get the variable terms to move from one expression on one side of the equation over to the other expression on the other side of the equation. Okay? These next two steps in your prep packet are a typo, compliments of me. They should be reversed. Step number 6 is to clear or to do any of the addition or subtraction. So it's kind of like PEMDAS except backwards. That we're going to do the adding and subtracting. We're going to clear it away first before we clear away the multiplying or dividing. Okay, so the question that you're going to ask yourself is there anything being added or subtracted from my variable? Okay. So if we look at the expression that we had in the distribution one, where'd that go? I'm not putting my hands on it fast. There we go. So in this expression, we have a 6 that's getting subtracted from the x. So we're going to clear out that subtract 6. We're going to use the additive inverse. Remember that word? To clear it out. Okay? And then our final thing is to ask ourselves, is there anything being multiplied or divided by our variable? So looking back at this example again, we have a 3 that's getting multiplied by our x. So we're going to use the multiplicative inverse to clear that multiplication away. If you need to see those again, just looking back through the old notes to see if I can find them here quickly. The inverse properties. Oh, they were right above the distributive ones. So the additive inverse is the number, the opposite, that adding 6 to a negative 6 will make it go away. And the multiplicative inverse is the reciprocal. You can get a negative 14 to go away or become a 1 by multiplying it by its reciprocal, negative 1/4. And then I guess 6 wasn't really your final step because I always want you to be in the habit of checking your answers. So that was one of the first skills that we learned in section 1.7 when we were evaluating. They had us take this expression 3p plus 7 and evaluate it for p equaling 10. So that skill is what we're going to be using to do our check. You're going to be figuring out what the p value is, and then when you get this value, I want you to put it back into your original equation and check to make sure that when you solved the expression on the left for that value and the expression on the right for that same value, do they in fact come out to be equal? Is the left side of your equation equal to 37, and is the right side of your equation equal to 37? So you always want to check your answer by evaluating. Now let's try some examples.